Always waiting on Rockfin. But what else is new? Rockfin, let's go. All right.
Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sab's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. What is going on, guys? We have so much to cover tonight. And we are going to do call in tonight after the show because I'm pretty sure you guys want to have a discussion about this. Yeah. So shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. And let's go ahead and dive right in. I want to go ahead and give a quick shout out to Sabby patrons. I have so much to discuss. I have a lot of clips to show you guys. Like that's the big thing here tonight. So I'm going to try to stay on schedule. Notice I said try. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. All of their names are listed here. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and of course, the ultimate. You can see all of them here. And you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate all of your support. It really does help me out. Kudos to the fam. All right. This is going to be a good show, guys. This is going to be a good one. Like I said, I have a lot of things to talk about. Let me go ahead and give shout outs to people in the chat really quick. What's going on, Soul? Says Bree with the truth. Love it. Purifier. Hello, Sabby. What's up? Shout out to INFJGC, who's a Sabby member. Sabby, I just subscribed to your newsletter. Please check your Pitch Me mailbox when you get a chance. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I saw your comment on one of the other videos. I will check that out and welcome. Shout out to Ryan, says, make it make sense. Sabby, I'm stealing your line. Oh, so I meant to tell you guys too, because you guys were asking me, or someone was asking me if I can make a t-shirt that says this is a problem. I guess I say that a lot. Yeah, I'm working on that. And I should make one that says this too, make it make sense. Yeah, so I'm working on some things for the merch, adding something different. So definitely. Shout out to Robin, says, must view YouTube. Great job on Glenn's show, Sabby. Let's do this. Thank you so much. Yeah, I was really pumped to go on Glenn Greenwald's show. If you haven't had a chance to see that interview, definitely check that out. His show is really good. His Rumble show. You guys have got to get over to Rumble if you're not on there, because there are some people that have only Rumble shows. So like Glenn Greenwald, Russell Brand, and also now Kim Iverson, they have shows that are only on Rumble. But Glenn's show is called System Update, and it's really cool. Like I like the format of it and everything. So check that out. Shout out to Terry, says, hello, Sabby in chat. Hello. Shout out to Sean, says, greetings, Negro. With allies like the Fraud Squad, who needs enemies? Oh my God. I have so much to say. It's like burning up inside of me. I want to get it out. What's going on? Hannah says, Sabby, Shout out to Gamer says, hello again, y'all. What's up, Gamer? Always around. Greetings, Sabby. Sabs says, happy Thursday. Shout out to Angela, who's a Sabby member, says, greetings all. Loved your appearance on Glenn's show, Sabby. Keep up the fight. Like button smash. Yeah, Hawk, smash that like button for me, guys. Greetings. Arif says, Liberia. Shout out to Carrie says, doobie doobie. Greetings off rail. Now, people. What's going on, Eric, who's a Sabby member, says Thursday greetings to one and all. Shout out to Cactus, gives a thumbs up there. What's going on, Sour Milk, says still love me, gamer. Not sure what that's about. Greetings, Ghost, says what up, Sabby and fam. Shout out to Joss, who sends a lot of emojis that I think mean love and sunshine. Shout out to Mark, says Sabby. Glenn said you were the best. Yeah, that really, like, I was really surprised. Like, I'm very humbled, very humbled. That means a lot coming from someone like him. Shout out to EG, says hello everyone. Greetings, Steve, says hello everybody. Shout out to Leroy, who's a Sabby member, says comrades. What's going on? Colin says happy Friday Eve, everyone. Greetings, Betsy, says happy Sabby fam and happy New Year. Oops, I got you already. Shout out to Terry Conley, says good evening, fam. Greetings, Robert, says vote for the like button. That's a good one. That's a good t-shirt thing too. I'm gonna stop talking about the shirts. What's going on? Kitty says, hi, comrades. Waves, glad to be here with you, lovely mates. Greetings, Cactus Man, says hi to Gamer. What's going on? The Oracle at Delphi. Hey there. Great showing on Glenn Greenwald's podcast. Thank you guys so much. You guys are so sweet. Thank you. I appreciate all of it. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and greetings, Delthea, who's a Sabby member, says happy New Year, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started because I have a lot to cover and sometimes I can talk too much. So let me go ahead and get into it. I do have to finish those ballot initiatives for Colorado. I'm actually going to get started with the other stories first. And if I have time tonight, I will do that at the end. If I don't, I will finish that on Friday. I have a lot of clips to go through tonight. So let's go ahead and share that thumbnail to show you guys what we are going to discuss tonight. Well. Tonight, we are going to discuss Briahna Joy Gray and Jimmy Dore vindicated for Force the Vote. Can't wait to get into that discussion there. I'm also going to discuss Matt Taibbi Twitter files part 11. Yes, we are already on number 11. There's been so much that has been revealed through the Twitter files, so I can't wait to discuss that as well. And I'm also going to discuss the UK rail strike update. So I did talk about that before the holidays, about that strike that was starting. They are still on strike, and I have some updates to give you about that you might be pretty surprised about. But solidarity with those rail workers there in the UK. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with the UK rail story there. Now, I actually want to play a clip from Case Study QB first, because this is a clip that is discussing the state of workers in this country, but it's not just this country. This problem is happening globally. So I'm going to link this with the rail strike that's happening in the UK. But I want you to listen to what they say in this clip about workers. And you guys know, as I've told you before, we should not shame the workers. I 100% support the workers. I believe that workers should have the ability to go on strike. I believe that people should have a living wage in this country. And I believe that if people are not given a living wage, they should have the opportunity to say, no, I'm not going to work for you because you're not going to pay me enough. Unfortunately, the individuals on this panel don't necessarily feel that way. They are going to attempt to blame the workers. Let's go ahead and get into it. You got to hear this to believe it. Not getting around.
So we have an overheated labor market right now, and it's because of what the Fed did, but also, fiscal stimulus disincentivizing people from going back to work. And right now we're in this situation where employees have more leverage over employers than they ever have. And it's kind of counterproductive to capitalism. And I think over the course of the next several months, several quarters, the Fed is going to be forced to have to reset the labor market. They're going to have to reset equilibrium. Just a quick story. Took my kids skiing to the local ski resort in Cleveland over the weekend. They're trying to, at the ski resort, they're trying to hire high school kids to work concession stands for $20 an hour. And they can't get high school kids to take that job. I think I was working for $5 an hour in high school. Now, that was a long time ago.
So it's not just the wages, but it's also saying, I want to work from home. I don't want to come in 2 days a week. I want this. I want that.
So we have an overheated labor market right now, and it's because of what the Fed did, but also, fiscal stimulus disincentivizing people from going back to work. And
let's pause right there. We have an overheated labor market because of the fact of the stimulus, financial stimulus, and because it's encouraged people basically to not want to go back to work. Now, I wanted to play the clip by itself first, and then we're going to dive through. Because notice that he didn't mention anything about the pandemic. Not once. He mentions financial stimulus, but he doesn't tell you why there was financial stimulus, which, by the way, I received 2 stimulus checks. Did that stop me from working? No. That $1,200 and that $600 wasn't enough to make me say, I'm not going to work anymore. And I think that's the case for most Americans. So let's point that out. Sorry, but he's being unrealistic here. Not mentioning the fact that we also had a pandemic. And during that time, there were workers that were overexploited even more than they were before the pandemic, because they had employers that were making them work longer hours. They weren't giving people raises to save money. Some of these employers did not have PPE. We know the whole Amazon story in reference to that and Chris Smalls. So these workers were working longer hours and not being compensated for it in the way that they should have been. At the same time, you had some employees that were able to work from home. I was one of those people when the pandemic started. For some of us, once we started working from home, we didn't want to go back into the office. We didn't want to have to deal with the commute and the traffic and the cost of getting there. Even for those who take public transportation, you still have to pay to take the public transportation. So for some of us that were working from home, we got used to getting our life back. We were able to start dinner maybe right after we're done working and not have to go through 2 hours of traffic to get home and then try to rush and start dinner, have time to eat, and then just go to sleep. We got used to the fact that if we were working from home, hey, during my lunch break, I can throw in a load of laundry if I want to. We got time back with friends. We got time back with family. I had employees tell me they got time back with their kids. He doesn't mention any of that. He blames it all on the fact that people were given these stimulus checks. And when he says financial stimulus, he's probably also talking about the child tax credit as well, which was temporary. So that didn't even last the entire time. Notice how he leaves that out. Let's go on. And of course, they don't correct them.
Incentivizing people from going back to work. And right now we're in this situation where employees have more leverage over employers than they ever have.
What's wrong with that? Listen to the way he's framing these statements. Employees have more leverage over employers than they ever have before. I don't see a problem with that. Don't see a problem with people going on strike. I don't see a problem with employees trying to start a union and unionize. I don't see a problem with employees trying to start worker co-ops. I have no problem with that. He has a problem with that because he doesn't want the employees to have that type of power. Let's go on.
And it's kind of counterproductive to capitalism. And I think over the course of the next...
Counterproductive to capitalism. You see this? That's the problem that he has. Because you have to continue to support capital. And in order for that to happen, they need your labor. That's why he's upset. We must keep capitalism going. That's how he feels.
Several months, several quarters, the Fed is going to be forced to have to reset the labor market. They're going to.
That should bother everyone. The Fed is going to have to be forced to reset the labor market. What does he mean by that? Reset it how? What are they going to do? Make people go to work?
Have to reset equilibrium. Just a quick story.
Equilibrium. Okay.
Took my kids skiing to the local ski resort in Cleveland over the weekend.
This is the class issue. He took his kids skiing at the local ski resort over the weekend. You see how out of touch he is with the working class? How many of you can afford to take your kids skiing? He said kids, so there's plural, there's more than one child, and he probably also had to pay for himself as well. How many of you can afford to do that? How many of you own a pair of skis and ski gear? Because you have to have the jackets and the goggles and all of that. How many of you can afford to do this? Do you see how out of touch this is? The class divide. He's complaining because he took his kids skiing and he's complaining about the labor. Listen to this.
They're trying to, at the ski resort, they're trying to hire high school kids to work concession stands for $20 an hour. And they can't get high school kids to
they
take
don't want
that
to do
job.
it for 20.
I think I was working for $5 an hour in high school. Now, that was a long.
See how people take their personal situation and try to apply it to the rest of the economy and the rest of Americans? He had a job when he was in high school and he was making $5 an hour and he was totally fine with that. That was a long time ago. So he's upset because they're trying to get high school kids to work at the ski resort and pay them $20 an hour, and people don't want to do it. First of all, teenagers are not obligated to work. I had a job when I was in high school as well, but teenagers are not obligated to have a job. At that point in time, your job really should be going to school, focusing on your studies, hanging out with your friends, that kind of thing. But he's upset because he went to the ski resort and they don't have enough people to work at the concession stands. He doesn't even stop and think about the fact that the majority of Americans can't even afford to go to the ski resort. Do you guys see the problem? That's the class divide. Let's go on.
Time ago.
So it's not just the wages, but it's also saying, I want to work from home. Yes. I don't want to come in 2 days a week. I want this. I want that.
So we have an.
What's wrong with that? There is nothing wrong with those things. If you have a job where you can do your work remotely, why can't you work from home? Why do you need to physically be in the office if you don't really need to be there? I say this to anybody, especially those of you that are software engineers. Those of you have jobs where you're just on your computer. Why do you need to physically be in the office? Some of these managers only want you there so they can keep an eye on you, so they can micromanage you, or because they don't trust their employees. They don't believe their employees are actually working when they're at home. If the work is getting done and they're still doing a good job, why does it matter if they are in the office or if they are working at home? Think about it, guys. Did you see the way that they were talking about the workers? Now, I want to connect this to the rail strike in the UK. because that's still happening. But there has been an update because they're still on strike. They started the strike right before the holidays. And now, because of their efforts, almost no trains will run across England on Thursday as drivers strike. In the beginning, there were limitations here. So they said that some of the trains are not going to be able to run as constantly as they were before because of the strike. But now, almost no trains. Let's get into it. Now, this is from The Guardian. Solidarity again to the rail workers. Industrial action by ASLEF members will stop services on major national rail lines, halting commuter services. Almost no trains will run in most parts of England on Thursday as train drivers at 15 operating companies go on strike. The 24-hour strike by members of the ASLEF union will stop services entirely across major national rail lines, halting most commuter services in the Southeast, Midlands, and North of England. In most areas, the impact on the railway will exceed that of this week's industrial action by RMT members at Network Rail and train operators, who will start a second 48-hour strike on Friday. This is how you shut things down. This is why Joe Biden and the rest of Congress did not want the rail workers to go on strike in the U.S., not just because it affects the supply chain, but also because if they go on strike, then nothing's moving. These trains are not moving. Let's go on. No trains at all will run on Avinti West Coast, Chiltern, Cross Country, East Midlands, Govia Thameslink Railway, Great Northern, Thameslink, Southern and Gatwick Express services, Northern, Southeastern, Trans-Pennine Express, and West Midland trains. Now, if any of you are in the UK and you're watching, you're in the chat, let me know. Because this is going to affect the commute. These are the commuter trains. So people who need to take the train to get to work, they're going to have to look for other options. Let's go on. Most services operated by ScotRail and Transport for Wales, whereas ASLEF has agreed pay deals, will run on Thursday, but intercity trains to Scotland and Wales from London will be severely limited. You guys know there's a lot of people in London. London is like the UK's New York City. So just keep that in mind. That would almost be like if all the subways, like the subway workers in New York City, went on strike. Imagine. Okay. ASLEF drivers have also settled disputes at Mersey Rail and in London and are not taking strike action at C2C. On Wednesday, the drivers' union dismissed as tokenism a pay offer reportedly being drawn up by the government ahead of its sixth day of coordinated strikes since the dispute started in early 2022. Mike Whelan, the general secretary of ASLEF, said that a possible £2,000 increase would be accepted by drivers. Now, he told the Guardian inflation was running this year at 14%. We've received no pay raise for the previous 2 years, and they want industry reform for 3%. I don't think that will fly with my members. So I've been talking a good bit about the UK the past couple of months. Yes, their inflation, I think last time I talked about this, they were at 10%. It's now at 14%. So imagine having a 14% inflation and you're not receiving a raise. They said they haven't received a raise for 2 years. So what are they supposed to do? I don't blame them for going on strike. I told you the story about the heating issue in the UK. how some of the residents are having to go to warm banks. That's what they're calling these facilities, so that they can get heat because they can't afford to pay for the heat to heat their home. So something has to give. Let's go on. ASLE's leadership is due to meet Rail Minister Hugh Merriman on Monday. Whelan said train drivers had been treated with contempt. We don't want to be on the picket lines. We don't want to be losing money. We don't want to be hurting the traveling public. But we've been given no alternative by the actions of the government and the industry. So you see, they have the government and the industry going against them. And again, they're not doing this to hurt the public, but they don't know what else to do at this point. The Department for Transport said passengers have rightly had enough of rail strikes and want the disruption to end. Unions should step back from this strike action so we can start 2023 by ending this damaging dispute. I want to highlight this piece right here. Damaging dispute. Do you see the rhetoric that is being used to talk about the strikes? Damaging, chaotic, disruptive. These are words that will give someone the impression that going on strike is bad. And it's not. This is a right that they have because they are a part of the union. About 20% of normal timetable trains will run over the rest of the week, with thousands of members of the RMT striking for 48 hours again on Friday and Saturday, with disruption continuing into Sunday. No further strikes are planned, although RMT and ASLEF members recently voted to extend the mandate for industrial action for a further 6 months. And I don't know why this is here, but this was just saying that Elon Musk is no longer the richest person in the world. But I want you guys to see how they're starting to speak about the workers, how they're starting to speak about the strikes. I've seen other articles as well where people are being very negative towards these employees that are choosing to go on strikes now, because now people feel like, oh, it's too much. It's too many of them. Too many of them. We were okay with it when it was like one or two. We were okay with it when it was just like Amazon, maybe when it was just like John Deere, Kellogg's. But now there's too many of them and it's gotten out of hand and we're not okay with it anymore. So we're going to start using negative vocabulary to make other people think that going on strike is bad. We have to have solidarity with the workers. So shout out to those of you in the UK that are on strike. I don't blame you. I don't blame you. Like I said, London is like the UK's New York City. So imagine if the subway workers in New York City decided to go on strike. You want to talk about shutting things down? When I lived in New York, I didn't know anyone who owned a car. I heavily relied on the subway. Most people in New York City do. Now, I'm not trying to put anything out there or anything and say, maybe they should do this. I don't know their working conditions, but I'm just saying. Just putting a little bug out there. Betsy says, Sabby, now that Maura is governor here in Massachusetts, everyone has gone back to brunch. I had to spend 2 hours with diehard Dems on Sunday, and OMG, I'm still recovering. Yeah, I've noticed that too. It's crazy. Thank you so much for the super sticker, JM, the little thumbs up there. Shout out to my comrade, JB. Hey ho, hey ho, hey ho. Remember that song, Sabs? Hello, all you beautiful people. I don't know that one. Maybe you mean hey ya. Thank you for this, Betsy. I'd love a t-shirt that says doing the damn thing. There's so many phrases. Shout out to M. Smith for the super chat. How long ago was that stimulus? So the last one that I received was over a year ago. It was over a year ago. Yeah. Anthony said, thanks for covering UK news. My sister always told me the UK is always 10 years behind the US. We follow you, which is why our society is going down the toilet. We will have private healthcare soon. I heard they were trying to privatize the healthcare system. Kitty says, I am proud of them for going on strike. They are an inspiration to us US workers. I am too. Shout out to you guys. All right. Mastermind says, I want my Sabby balls t-shirt. Balls. Oh, God. Could you imagine wearing that shirt? A lot of people probably ask you, like, whose balls? What balls are you talking about? What kind of balls are you talking about? Okay. Let's go ahead and get into our next story, which is Twitter Files Part 11. So much has come out in the past couple of weeks about the Twitter Files. This particular segment is about Russiagate and how Twitter let the intelligence community in. Now, this one is not as long as the others, but we're going to walk ourselves through it. You really need to hear this. It's not just about Twitter. It's also about Facebook and some of the politicians that had their hand in this as well. So let's go ahead and dive into it. The Twitter Files, how Twitter let the intelligence community in. All right. So Matt Taibbi, here we go. In August 2017, when Facebook decided to suspend 300 accounts with suspected Russian origin, Twitter wasn't worried. Its leaders were sure they did not have a Russia problem. Let's carry on. We did not see a big correlation. No large patterns. Facebook may take action on hundreds of accounts, and we may take action on approximately 25. And so Matt Taibbi put a screenshot here. With Facebook on this effort, we can do that. We'll just want to be careful about expectations. Facebook may take action on hundreds of accounts, and we may take action on approximately 25. We can add YOL for more detail. And then there's another screenshot here of an email from Colin Crowell that says, now that the story is out, it seems like the focus is on the purchasing of 100K of Facebook ads by these Russian accounts. Pay attention to this, guys. Understanding that we did not see a big correlation on our platform that Facebook found on theirs. Have we run the analysis of whether the accounts we did have purchased Twitter promoted products? Now, that's coming from Colin Crowell, who is the Vice President of Global Public Policy and Philanthropy. You know, they kill me with these titles sometimes. Like when I used to work in corporate America, they used to create these fancy titles for people that really didn't make any sense. And I'm like, that is not what they do for their job. Keep the focus on Facebook. Twitter was so sure they had no Russia problem. Execs agreed the best PR strategy was to say nothing on record and quietly hurl reporters at Facebook. And this is something we did see happen. It goes on to say here, we can be more candid pushing the book back to Facebook on background. Issuing a statement brings us closer to Facebook, their vulnerabilities on this issue, and the follow-up stories on Russia. We are working on a reactive calm strategy. Our initial sense is nothing or at most a sentence on the record, so we keep the focus on Facebook. Primary work will be off the record and background, working as fast as we can given the short notice, but we'll try to share material ASAP. So again, this is Taibbi sending screenshots here. Most of these are emails as well. I did see Matt Taibbi on Jimmy Dore last night, and he was explaining that, unfortunately, when it comes to some of the topics that we're asking for, like, is there anything on Assange? Is there anything about the Palestinian community that was also suppressed on Twitter? The way Matt Taibbi explained it was that it's tricky because you have to go through the information and check and see if there's email correlations to those topics. So if he couldn't find anything that actually pins that down, then there's nothing for him to share. Twitter is not the focus of inquiry into Russian election meddling right now. The spotlight is on Facebook. Pay attention to how they keep repeating this talking point. The spotlight is on Facebook. That again came from Colin Crowell. And here's that email here. I guess it's not confidential anymore. Privileged and confidential. So he goes into detail here. I'm not going to read everything, but you guys can see this on Twitter as well. I will be here all night if I do that. But it says the Facebook announcement today is going to draw us into conversations with Congress on this. And we need to duly assess what we know and be responsive to inquiries from Capitol Hill. Hold that piece in the back of your mind. Don't forget that. It's going to draw them into conversations with Congress. That will be important later on. So Taibbi goes on to say, September 2017, after a cursory review, Twitter informed the Senate it suspended 22 possible Russian accounts and 179 others with possible links to those accounts, amid a larger set of roughly 2,700 suspects manually examined. Now, I want to give you this number. Let's say it was 2,700. How many people use Twitter? Millions of people, right? The fact that they wanted them to go through all of this for that amount of accounts, that's a small number when you compare that to millions of people. Just think about that. Let's go on. Receiving these meager results, a furious Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, ranking Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, held an immediate press conference to denounce Twitter's report as frankly inadequate on every level. Again, this right here is a senator. So now you have a senator, a politician chiming in about how Twitter should run their platform. This is dangerous, if you ask me. He sends screenshots here. Twitter briefing to U.S. congressional investigators disappointing. So that's the screenshot there. It says Senator Mark Warner. And then it goes on to say Senator Blast Twitter presentation on Russia influence was inadequate on every level. So the information that Twitter provided them, Senator Warner was not happy about what they found. He didn't feel that it was accurate. He didn't feel that it was enough. Irony. Mused Crowell the day after Warner's presser. After receiving an e-circular from Warner's reelection campaign asking for $5 or whatever you can spare. LOL, coming from the general counsel, Sean Edgett. And here's an example of that here. You guys know we receive these emails and these text messages, people asking for money. So he had received this from Senator Mark Warner, the same one who just blasted them, basically. And it says, Colin, we only got a short amount of time before Saturday's crucial end of quarter fundraising deadline. And honestly, we're behind. That's because Mark has been focusing on the fight to save healthcare, helping out fellow Senate Democrats facing a tough reelection fight and getting ready for next week's battle over the Trump budget. More on that later. So right after this senator decided to throw Twitter under the bus publicly in a statement, they're sending out a fundraiser email to the same person that works for Twitter. Boy, I tell you. So it goes on to say, keep producing material. After meeting with congressional leaders, Crowell wrote, Warner has political incentive to keep this issue at top of the news, maintain pressure on us and the rest of the industry to keep producing material for them. You see this? Political incentive. Why are politicians telling Twitter how to run their company? There's a screenshot here from Matt Taibbi, and there's the highlighted piece here. Warner has political incentive to keep this issue top of news, maintain pressure on us and rest of industry to keep producing material for them. So they were going to continue to ask for more material. So now you have, again, this is dangerous to me. You have a politician telling a social media platform what they can and cannot have on their platform and what they should produce for them. Going on, Taibbi says, taking their cues from Hillary Clinton. Crowell added Dems were taking cues from Hillary Clinton, who that week said it's time for Twitter to stop dragging its heels and live up to the fact that its platform is being used as a tool of cyber warfare. And here's an example of that email here from Colin. And then there's the highlighted piece there where it says taking cues from Hillary Clinton. Well, well, well. Of course she would be involved. Why was Twitter, why were they taking cues from Hillary Clinton? Let's go on. There's another screenshot he posts here. Hillary Clinton accuses Facebook, Twitter, and Google of enabling Russian agents. You guys see this? Like, for people who are saying that Matt Taibbi and them are just dumping all this stuff out and it's not real or whatever, there are screenshots of the headlines. There are screenshots of the emails. And those people know that that information is there. Ay. Let's go on. In growing anxiety over its PR problems, Twitter formed a Russia task force. Of course they did. To proactively self-investigate. Here's the screenshot here. This comes from Carlos. Team, thanks for being drafted to the Russia task force. For the next month, this team will focus on conducting a more fulsome retro of the 2016 election, preparing for open congressional hearings at the end of the month, telling Twitter's story publicly, including robust outreach to outside researchers, reporters, and members of Congress. Why does Twitter have to implement robust outreach to members of Congress? You can't make this up. You really can't. All right, moving on. The Russia task force started mainly with the data shared from counterparts at Facebook, centered around accounts supposedly tied to Russia's Internet Research Agency, IRA. But the search for Russian perfidy was a dud. And here is the screenshot here. Now, this was October 11th, 2017. We have an initial list of suspicious advertising content, a lot of benign content. Need to further investigate before we can draw a conclusion. Here's the status update. This is an ads investigation. Models built that produce list of tweets found 8,000 around election content and a further 700 accounts with potential list of accounts with Russian links. Deeper analysis required before determining if connection between lists and Russia. Group will do manual reviews with legal and comms teams around next phase to align on the approach. So now it has gotten to the point where they have to go in and do manual reviews of these accounts. You know how much work that takes? They were just destined to find something. That's the thing. They wanted them to produce something. And what they were coming back with, it wasn't enough for them. No evidence of coordinated approach. All of the accounts found seem to be lone wolf type activity. Different timing, spend, targeting, less than 10K in ads spent. What does that mean? Lone wolf. That means usually these are people that are on their own. It's not a group or a network of people working together. So they had them do all of this work on the back end, manual reviews to track down lone wolf activity. That's not worth your time. Moving on, he has a screenshot here where they give that update. lone wolf activity. So they're still not finding what they've been asked to basically find. So they're coming back with less here. Not sure why I'm stuck here. Let's see. Oh, type VNC. I got to log back in. Sorry. Yeah, Eric, I can't log in. Oh, never mind. Oh, nope. It's telling me to log in again. Sorry, guys. Hold on one second. I don't know why. I think I pressed it too many times. As now it's telling me to log in multiple times. Hold on. Yeah, Eric, I can't see anything. Like type VNC left StreamYard. I'll go to some of the comments while we figure that out, and we'll get back into it. Mike says the best part is the U.S. government paid Twitter $4 million for this. You know what else they could have done with that money? That's crazy, dude. That's crazy. Stumped says corrupt politicians or bureaucrats paid Twitter $4 million to censor us. Like, this is just, it's crazy how they just waste money. Oh, I think Eric got it back up. While we're at it, guys, go ahead and hit that like button if you haven't had a chance to do so. Sometimes I get so deep into what I'm talking about, I forget to tell people to do that, but that really does help me with the algorithm. So let's go ahead and do that jazz. Okay, so Eric, I see it, but it's not in StreamYard. So can you have to add type VNC to the StreamYard, because otherwise I can't pull it up on this. Oh, he said okay. Okay. Yeah, I can find where I was. I just needed add it back to that. Bill says, I mean, once the government is paying them to remove accounts, how can people pretend there is any separation? And this is the thing, too, for the people who are like smearing Matt Taibbi as right wing all of a sudden now. It's just like, I'm sorry, but the evidence and everything is there. I don't understand. Like, it's not like he's just tweeting things with no documentation. He's tweeting this information, but he's also giving you screenshots as well. People just don't like the fact that he's saying bad things about the Democratic Party. That's what that's about. All right, so let me go back to where I was. I believe I was right about here. Okay, I talked about the 10K. So let's go jump back in here. First round of the RU investigation, 15 high-risk accounts, 3 of which have connections with Russia, although 2 are RT. Listen to this. So he mentions that here, first round of RU investigation, the results of the 15. He goes on to say 2 are RT. So what you guys got to understand, for those of you who are not familiar, RT is Russia Television. There were a lot of people that had shows over there, RT. There was like RT America. Chris Hedges had a show there. Jesse Ventura had a show there. Lee Camp. I think Abby Martin have. I think Abby may have had one over there. Anyway, you get the point. Those shows were really good. And so if you are not on Twitter now, you may not know this, but even at some point, Twitter decided that they were going to label people that had worked with RT as Russia affiliated content. So they'll have that label underneath their name. And that does 2 things. And I talked about this on Fault Lines this morning. That does 2 things. One, it makes people say, okay, I'm going to read their information. I'm going to read their posts. I'm going to watch their content, but I'm probably not going to believe what they say because they have that label. Or it makes people avoid them altogether. So that prevents them from getting the message out. So let's go on. So he goes on to say, built a new version of the model that is lower precision, but higher recall, which allows to catch more items. We aren't seeing substantially more suspicious accounts. We expect to find approximately 20 with a small amount of spend. So even at this point, they're not seeing it. Even at this point, they're not getting more accounts that is saying that it has some type of like Russia affiliation or whatsoever. So they're still trying to get them to find something. And then here's a copy of that screenshot here. For the sake of time, I'm not going to read all the screenshots, guys. Finish with the investigation. 2,500 full manual account reviews. We think this is exhaustive. 32 suspicious accounts and only 17 of those are connected with Russia. Only 2 of those have significant spend, one of which is Russia Today. RT Russia Today. Sorry, guys. Remaining less than 10K in spending. 32 suspicious accounts and only 17 were connected with Russia. They had them do all of that work to produce 17 accounts. Again, millions of people use Twitter. What a waste of time. Now it goes on to say, Twitter search finding only 2 significant accounts, one of which is Russia Today, was based on the same data that later inspired panic headlines like Russian influence reached 126 million through Facebook alone. See, and there's that screenshot of that article there. Again, see how there's this focus for Facebook. The failure of the Russia task force to produce material worsened the company's PR crisis. So they still weren't able to produce it. In weeks after Warner's presser, again, we're referring back to the politician, a torrent of stories sourced to the Intel Committee poured into the news. An example being Politico's October 13th. Twitter deleted data potentially crucial to Russia probes. And here's a screenshot of that here. That was from Politico. So again, they're trying to make something out of nothing. And by they, I mean the media and also Warner as well. Were Twitter a contractor for the FSB, they could not have built a more effective disinformation platform. That is coming from Johns Hopkins professor Thomas Rid. Now, he said this in Politico. So there's a screenshot of that statement there. Again, for people smearing Matt Taibbi, the evidence is here. As Congress threatened costly legislation and Twitter was subject to more bad press fueled by the committees, the company changed its tune about the smallness of its Russia problem. And here we go. Hi, guys. Just passing along for awareness, the write-up here from the Washington Post today on potential legislation or new FEC regulations that may affect our political advertising. This is coming from Colin. And here's a screenshot of that email here where it says Facebook, Google, and Twitter face proposed bill targeting shadowy political ads. So this is where this comes in. Like, we knew about Facebook. Well, I'll say this. I'm sorry. I knew about Facebook. I don't want to assume you guys did because I remember hearing about that in mainstream media. But now we're starting to see that Twitter was a part of this as well. But again, they wanted to keep the focus on Facebook at that time. Again, hi, guys. Just passing along for awareness. The write-up here from the Washington Post today. Did I just read this? I think I just read this twice. I did. Sorry. In Washington, weeks after the first briefing, Twitter leaders were told by the Senate staff that Senator Warner feels like tech industry was in denial for months. Added an Intel staffer. Big interest in Politico article about deleted accounts. And here's the screenshots of this as well. What he was saying about Warner. And then there's also a screenshot here about the Intel staffer, the Politico article that he was referring to there as well. Now, he goes on to say, Twitter pledged to work with them on their desire to legislate. I outlined our work streams and they seemed content and looked forward to having us come and preview our testimony at the end of next week with the Intel staff. We also pledged to work with them on their desire to legislate in the area of political ads. They indicated the general model is, and then it trails off there for some reason. I think it just probably didn't fit in the entire screenshot. Knowing that our ads policy and product changes are an effort to anticipate congressional oversight, I wanted to share some relevant highlights of the legislation Senators Warner, Klobuchar, and McCain will be introducing. Now, that message is coming from the policy director, Carlos Monje. Look at the politicians. We've been talking about Warner this whole time, but now you also see Klobuchar and McCain. Does anybody find this to be odd? Here's a screenshot here. The Honest ad extends to paid digital advertisements, the FEC requirements that apply to broadcast radio and print ads. And then they add here political matters of public importance, including national legislative issues of public importance, to the list of issues for which the FEC would require enhanced political disclosure, in addition to ads that mention candidates directly. So here is Twitter getting their hand involved with political ads. Let's go on. I'm almost finished here. The committee appear to have leaked even as Twitter prepared to change its ads policy and remove RT and Sputnik to placate Washington. Congress turned up the heat more, apparently leaking the larger base list of 2,700 accounts. Now, let me highlight RT and Sputnik. Those are two of the ones that if you see people who work for those particular organizations, they will have that Russia affiliated label under their name on Twitter. And it sucks because there's people doing really great work there, really great work. So as you can see, Congress is starting to turn up the heat. And then you see the screenshot here of the email from Carlos. Will do on House intel. The committee appeared to have leaked the account names based on reporting of experts combing through the list and revealing new info, just like on Brexit. Reporters from all over started to call Twitter about Russia links. BuzzFeed, working with the University of Sheffield, claimed to find a new network on Twitter that had close connections to a Russian linked bot account. And here's a screenshot of that here. Hi, team. We had the below request from BuzzFeed in the UK. Can we run an analysis of the accounts ASAP? You see this? We've been working with some of the researchers at the University of Sheffield, UK, to look at some of the tweets from the list of accounts submitted by Twitter to the US Congress in connection with its, and this is the whole Russiagate thing. I have to be careful what I say on here. Trying to make something out of nothing, you guys. It will only embolden them. Twitter internally did not want to endorse the BuzzFeed Sheffield findings. So this is not something that Twitter wanted to do. And here's a screenshot here. These are definitely bad accounts, and based on their phone carriers, they have signs of being connected to Russia. Once we've settled on a press strategy, we can and should suspend all of them. Guys, this is absolutely ridiculous. This is unbelievable that they went this far. This far. I think we need to get at their questions by emphasizing the limited scope of the 2,700 accounts we specifically identified to Congress. So they turned those accounts into Congress. This is like basically feeding into the whole Russiagate theory. Interesting. Interesting. Moving on. There's another screenshot here. I'd prefer not to ask the reporters at BuzzFeed for their methodology. It will only embolden them, and it indirectly undermines the credibility and authority of our own approach. Furthermore, they will chart the correspondence in their follow-up. Twitter asked for our methodology, which has resulted in more suspensions. This calls into question the effectiveness of their own tools. Senate Intel Committee is asking possible to whip something together. Still, when BuzzFeed piece came out, the Senate was asking for a write-up of what happened. Twitter was soon apologizing for the same accounts they'd initially told the Senate were not a problem. So do you guys see what has happened? Twitter already stated their case. They already dug up all this information through manual review, by the way, produced that information for them, turned that information over, and basically told them there's not much here. We don't have much for you. So these accounts are not a problem. But even though they did that, Twitter had to end up apologizing for those accounts that they told them were not a problem. And here's a screenshot of that correspondence here, where it goes on to say, yep, we'll work on something now and share with this group and feedback shortly. That's coming from Yoel Roth. And then Carlos' response is Senate Intel Committee is asking for a write-up of what happened with these accounts from our perspective. Is it possible to whip something together? Boy, they have their hand in everything. Reporters now know this is a model that works. And keep this piece in the back of your head. Reporters now know this is a model that works. This cycle threatened legislation, wedded to scare headlines pushed by congressional intel sources, followed by Twitter caving to moderation asks, would later be formalized in partnerships with federal law enforcement. And here's the screenshot of that here. Hi, everyone. Given we've now suspended all accounts, we will take a hit in the press that moves from BuzzFeed to more establishment publications. We'll work to contain it. Relatedly, we can expect more investigation of accounts that are tangibly associated with the IRA handover to the U.S. committees, buoyed by academic brand names. Reporters now know this is a model that worked. This is something I think we need to remember. BuzzFeed leaked that information. They know if you give that information to Congress, then that puts pressure back on software companies like Twitter, social media companies like Twitter. Same thing with Facebook. Might as well add Snapchat and Instagram in here as well. All of them. That puts the pressure on them. Even though Twitter execs said these accounts were not an issue, they still told them basically to make it an issue. Everyone should have a problem with this. Twitter soon settled on its future posture. In public, it removed content at our sole discretion. Privately, they would offboard anything identified by U.S. intelligence community as a state-sponsored entity conducting cyber operations. And there's that policy there, external offboarding policy that you guys can go through. It says the twitter.com rules, the ad policy, all of that stuff. Any user identified by the U.S. intelligence community as state-sponsored entity conducting cyber operations against targets against the U.S. or other elections, etc. So they basically were forcing their hand. Twitter let the USIC into its moderation process. It would not leave, wrote Crowell, in an email to the company's leaders. We will not be reverting to the status quo. And there's a copy of this here. And I believe I have one more. And so Matt says for more Twitter files, check out Barry Weiss, Schellenberger, Lee Fang. I think his name is Lee. and David Wig. So that's that. And what I think should bother everyone is the fact that Congress was able to basically force the hand of Twitter to produce something. Then they produce the product, and it's not what Congress was looking for. It wasn't what they wanted to see. And so they were bullied into admitting there was a problem with those accounts, even though they knew that there wasn't. Make it make sense. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. Dude complaining there's no one there to serve him. Ha ha ha. Okay. So what are we doing? So what we are doing is working. Great. Keep it up, guys. Our enemies are being inconvenienced. Sab, you have to peep the takedown Larry put to Holchel. She's complaining about MTA and LIRR ridership down, causing a drop in the ability to continue paying for it. Yet our taxes already pay for it. So we are double taxed. Make free fund with a public bank. I agree. I hear you. I totally hear you. Let me go to some of these comments here and we'll get to our next story. JB says, if the government is paying you to perform an action, you're employed by them. So Twitter is essentially a government platform. Bingo. Roger says, Sabby, you were on fault lines again, like twice this week. Yes. Guys, if you sign up for my newsletter, you would have received, I think I sent that this morning. Yeah, you should have received an email, my newsletter email that told you I would be on there. But yeah, Indy says, hi, everyone. What's up, Indy? Love in the house. Shout out to Stephen Cole. Thank you so much for becoming a Sabby member. We give you a big whoop, whoop. Stumped says, I got the U.S. government to worry about, too busy to worry about Russians. I hear you. The Oracle says, this is a type of McCarthyism. And also, this is part of manufacture of consent. There you go. There you go. So we'll see more from Matt Taibbi pretty soon, actually. Pretty soon. All right, let's get into our next story here. So I have some updates for you guys. If you have not been paying attention, it has been 9 rounds and Kevin McCarthy has still not been elected as Speaker of the House. Now, that's what I saw before I went live. If anything changed since I started talking on here, please let me know. But so what we have here, and we talked about this the other day, is the fact that you have a group of Republican politicians in the House that have decided to force the vote, so to speak, on someone like a Kevin McCarthy, that they would not vote for him unless they got certain concessions. So they've made a number of demands. Actually, I'm just going to call them demands. They made a number of demands. Some of them appear to be personal, but some of them do appear to be rules oriented. Like one of the things they wanted to do is that they wanted to make it easier to remove a speaker. So that was one of the things they wanted. Another one has to deal with the budget. Like they want to deal with the deficit spending. So that's another thing they brought up. So I know some people are saying it's all personal. It's not all personal. There's other things in there as well, right? Okay. Now, whether I agree with their demands or not, that is besides the point. Because this event that is taking place right before our eyes and is on national television for everyone to see, it just kind of, it brings back old memories, you know? It brings back memories of Force the Vote on the left and the Force the Vote town hall. Now, I didn't have my show back then, but I watched all of it. I watched that whole thing play out. And seeing them chip away at Kevin McCarthy and seeing him get taken down round after round after round and him add more concessions or agree to more concessions, it stings a little bit because that's what we could have had. But we didn't have people that were willing to do it. On top of not having people that were willing to do it, we had people who decided to change their mind. In the beginning, it appeared that everybody was on board for this. That includes people like Cenk Uygur, Sam Cedar, etc. I don't want to say too much because Briahna Joy Gray is going to get into that into a segment I'm going to show later on about what happened there. But somewhere along the way, there was some information that went out that was not true. And I feel that this really hurt the action. And that information came from Cenk Uygur. So let's go back. Cenk Uygur said, for all people pushing Fraud Squad, do you understand that if all 10 Justice Dems had voted present, GOP leader would be speaker right now? What would that have accomplished? Easy being destructive. You have to come up with a plan for being constructive. So the problem is that was actually false. If that were true, then Hakeem Jeffries would be speaker right now. You see how these things just come, they have a way of coming right back. That wasn't true. That message was spread not just on Twitter, but on TYT's platform. So that message went out to hundreds and thousands of people. And even though their own audience, because they polled them, even though their own audience was in favor of forcing the vote, they still were against it. They backed away. We'll get into the reason why. But as we watch things unfold with this speakership situation with Kevin McCarthy, you can't help but feel a little bitter in a sense. And Jimmy Dore put it so eloquently. Today's events are confirming that our idea was 100% correct, and the progressives in Congress are phonies who turned on their own supporters and became proud establishment hacks. Everyone who opposed it are now revealed as huge liars and gaslighters. And we're going to get into the gaslighting part because people are still doing it, by the way. Just a reminder of what we were asking, right? Okay. So it stings a little bit. Now, I want to make sure I'm on the right one. Give me a second. Yeah. Now, a lot of people, they want to blame Jimmy Dore for this, but this was something that came from the DSA handbook. So Jimmy did talk about this. I just want to show that piece here. Let me go to 2049 because I want you to see this. Because for all the people pointing fingers at Jimmy Dore, again, you have to understand where it came from.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. All these internet DSO, everybody's trying. The DSA, the people at the DSA, which is a completely corrupt organization. Now, not the members. The members join in good faith, but the people who lead that organization are 100% corrupt. 100%. They're not who you think they are. They're getting paid by somebody. They got a phone call because they're not even doing the thing that they put in their own goddamn handbook. It's in their own handbook. What's right here? It says the House Pressure Campaign Guide. And what does it say? It says we need to now. This is 2019. We need now to fight back against the assault in an unshakable working class movement capable of forcing politicians to reject lobbyists' influence. Now is the time to be clear about our demands and pressure politicians to get on board. Pushing a floor vote in the House not only tests the political strength of the movement to make that happen, it also sends the bill to the Senate, calling the question there. Though we know Medicare for all will not become a reality under the Trump administration, a House floor vote is the best which side are you on political opportunity in 2019, and it sets the stage to make Medicare for all the decisive issue of 2020. They then pretended they didn't write that.
Okay, so here's the problem. Again, you can see this online yourself, this DSA handbook here, but I've read through that whole policy, so I know what they were supposed to do. And even in their language there, they tell you, we know it's not going to become a reality that you're going to get Medicare for all under a Trump administration. So they said that. Now, for the people who are coming back at us and they make these statements like, doesn't make any sense, it wasn't going to pass. DSA pointed that out in their own handbook, but DSA still wanted you to do it. You see the difference, right? But you notice those people who criticize the rest of us that say, no, they were still supposed to do it. They're not criticizing DSA's handbook, which is exactly what it says in the handbook. They're criticizing podcasters instead of DSA's own language. Let's go on.
DSA and their leadership was MIA during Force the Vote, except when they would come on Twitter to shit on Force the Vote, the thing that's in their own handbook. So now you know what's happened in the left. The corporate America has completely co-opted left organizations, which is why you haven't heard shit about Medicare for all the whole time Joe Biden has been president, and you haven't even heard anything about the public option. Nothing.
Right.
They're not doing a fucking thing at the DSA except gaslighting you and taking your revolutionary progressive energy and sticking it right in the ass of a fucking corporation and a party. That's what the DSA is there to do, and I'm there to disabuse you of the idea that they're there to help you. Go ahead. Go.
Okay, I wanted to show that piece there, and I want to say something really quick about DSA. DSA, in my opinion, should remove the word socialist from their name. Stop calling yourself DSA. Start calling them DOA, Democrats of America, or Dead on Arrival. Whichever one you guys pick, because they're not making anything happen. They're really not. Now, this organization, to me, based on what I've seen, it appears to be more of a social club, because they have this handbook that gives you all of these suggestions and also different strategy. It's all laid out there for you. Different types of policies, different types of beliefs, what they stand for, their platform, but they don't hold the members accountable for not following any of that. They don't remove these politicians that are a part of DSA for not following any of that. So to me, this is just like a social club. Doesn't really seem like it's doing anything here. Now, people are still, today, this week, they are still trying to give a message about Force the Vote that was not correct. And one of those people is Anna Kasparian. So I want you to see what she had to say. Now, this is recent. This is not 2020. Watch Anna Kasparian lie about Force the Vote. She's still lying about it. Listen to this.
I want to read one super chat because it asks an important question. I actually was tempted in talking about this a little bit in the previous segment, but I decided against it. Now I'm going to. The question is, can you explain how this Force the Vote is different than Dems Force the Vote? There are lots of Force the Vote proponents who say AOC should have done what the Republicans are doing now with Pelosi in 2020. Well, remember, Force the Vote was about withholding votes for Nancy Pelosi's speakership role until she made the concession that there would be a floor vote on single-payer health care in the House, which would have failed. Okay, so the ask was for a vote that would fail. I mean, I at this point, I almost just wish that it would have happened because.
Let me explain what Anna Kasparian is doing here, because this is Anna Kasparian gaslighting her audience. And I talked about this on Twitter, because Anna Kasparian knows exactly what the strategy was for Force the Vote. Again, like I told you in the beginning, they were all on board for it. We'll get into that later as to why people walked away. But she knows exactly what the strategy was. The strategy was not necessarily to get Medicare for all to pass. They knew they did not have the votes. The strategy was to get those politicians on record, and the ones who voted against it, those politicians should be primary challenged. That was the strategy of Force the Vote. Oh, and by the way, they could have forced the vote on anything. It didn't have to just be Medicare for all, Anna, and she knows that too. They could have forced the vote on canceling student loan debt. They could have forced the vote on universal pre-K. They could have forced the vote on any of those progressive issues that they ran on. So this whole thing about Medicare for all and it was going to fail, so there was no point in doing it, that was not the strategy, and that was not the point of Force the Vote. And Anna Kasparian knows that. So she is sitting here and she is intentionally gaslighting her audience. Even today. Let's go on.
Because I would give anything to have Briahna Joy Gray move on with her life and maybe talk about something different. Like, it's ridiculous. But this McCarthy situation is different because the concessions that McCarthy has agreed to don't even matter for the group of Republicans who refuse to vote.
She had to throw in. Watch this. You see this little jab?
And I at this point, I almost just wish that it would have happened because I would give anything to have Briahna Joy Gray move on with her life and maybe talk about something different. Like, it's ridiculous.
Why is it ridiculous, Anna? Why can't she talk about it? Considering what is happening right in front of us this week right now, why can't Bri talk about it? And by the way, it's not just her talking about it. Other people are bringing it up too. We see what's happening right before our eyes. You want Bri to stop talking about it so people can stop pointing their fingers back at you. That's why you want her to stop talking about it, because you guys lied about Force the Vote. Boy, I tell you.
But this McCarthy situation is different because the concessions that McCarthy has agreed to don't even matter for the group of Republicans who refuse to vote for him, okay? They don't care about the concessions. They don't trust him, and they've said so. They don't.
Now, I told you some of it was personal, but I also told you that some of the concessions that they're asking for have to deal with different processes, changing the rules on removing the speaker, the budget issue, the deficit. It's not just because they don't like him. There are other things that they have asked for, but Anna Kasparian isn't going to tell her audience that again. She is gaslighting the people.
Don't trust him. They're not going to vote for him. It's not about concessions. The whole Force the Vote thing was about an ask that would have ultimately failed and could have potentially hurt single-payer healthcare or the pursuit of single-payer healthcare, because maybe some who might be open-minded to it would be less open-minded to it if it's already failed through a House vote. You get what I'm saying?
No, I don't get what you're saying. I don't get what Anna is saying. It would hurt it. This sounds like CIA talking points. And this is not to say that she is affiliated with them. I want to be very clear. But it's that same type of rhetoric to where it's like, we can't try to do something because it may fail. You'll get people like this in the activist community as well sometimes. Those of you that do activism, like those of us at RBN, you'll find people like this too. That's how you can tell some of these people are infiltrators. You'll come up with an idea and you'll start organizing with people. And then there's that one person that you look at a little side eye and they're like, well, we can't do this because of this and it might fail. We might not get this and we might not get there. And all along, when you could have been taking those steps to get that action to happen, that person actually derails your progress and you don't end up doing anything at all. That's a CIA tactic. Those people do exist. I've met them. So Anna's point is, if something's going to fail, then just don't do it. Anna only want to do things that she know for sure is guaranteed win. What that tell you? Oh boy.
Anyway, but at this point, I don't even care. I wish it would have happened so we could just move on. I'm so tired of like the personal branding exercises that are like forced upon us day in, day out by people who can't move on from something that happened literally in like 2019 or 2020. But
that wasn't that long ago, Anna. She says it as though it's like that was like 10, 15 years ago. What? Someone explain this to me. Someone explain this to me. So people are still lying about it. Still lying. Just admit that you were wrong, but they can't do that because too much pride. Then you have to come to this question. Why didn't the squad force the vote? The closest I got to that was this interview with Max Blumenthal when he approached Cori Bush at the eviction moratorium at the Capitol. Listen to this. I've talked about this when it first happened, but let's revisit.
Well, that's where we are.
And I heard like last night there was a lot less.
Very true. And I wish we would have talked about that this was where your conversation.
Well, it's great to see so many more people.
Whose bill that is. That is.
Heard there was.
Whoa.
Not.
I'm not sure what happened there, but it's like saying one thing and doing another thing. Let's try this again. Yeah, sorry about that, Eric. Sometimes we have to like refresh. If it's been there for a minute, we might have to refresh the page. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, guys. Those Twitter videos can be like that sometimes.
Well, that's where we are.
And I heard like last night there was a lot less people. It's great to see so many more people. But I heard there was an intense debate about the role of the squad and why the squad didn't leverage its vote for the speaker for Medicare for all vote, and why the squad, I mean, with the margin so narrow in Congress, why the squad didn't
yes, because
leverage its vote on the stimulus to get a $15 minimum wage. What?
No. So first, one thing that was said last night, which is something that's very.
Oh, hold on. Thanks.
Something that's very, very true. And I wish we would have talked about that this was where your conversation was going, because we're talking about the rally for tonight. And
she wanted him to talk about where his conversation was going ahead of time so she could walk away from that conversation. So she wouldn't have to answer that question. So she could bail. That's why she wanted to know that ahead of time. She's just deflecting.
I really would love to keep the conversation on what's happening.
I feel like it's all related to healthcare and the.
It absolutely is, but this is the thing. What was said last night is that this bill, Medicare for All, is not. No, there's no person on the squad whose bill that is. That is Bernie Sanders' bill in the Senate. It is Pramila Jayapal's bill in the House.
Let me call bullshit on this, right? So I talked about this when this interview first happened. So Cori Bush just told you that basically because it was Bernie Sanders' bill and Pramila Jayapal's bill, and none of the squad members were a part of that bill, they weren't going to force the vote because it wasn't their bill. The Medicare for All bill wasn't their bill. But all this year, we've watched them support bills that weren't their damn bills. You see why this doesn't make any sense? That's the most ridiculous line I could have ever heard, because they weren't thinking about whether it was Bernie Sanders or Pramila Jayapal's bill when they ran on it for their campaigns. They weren't thinking about that. Watch what happens next.
It is not our bill. We can't.
Sorry. I don't know. It's this particular video. I don't know why it's doing that. It helps if you Yeah, you might have to refresh it again. And I think we just
no, there's no person on the squad whose bill that is. That is Bernie Sanders' bill in the Senate. It is Pamela Jayapal's bill in the House. It is not our bill. We cannot make that bill come to the floor. There is nothing that we can do legally to get the bill to the floor. We have
But Pelosi could have brought the bill to the floor.
We're good here, thank you.
Well, what? Well,
see this?
We're
See?
fine at this.
Why
I'm
can't
here to
she
talk about
answer the
this. We're
question?
here.
And this is continued with Cori Bush throughout this year as well. Cori Bush doesn't want to answer tough questions. She runs away. Here comes Dude in to protect her from any more questions about force the vote. This is not the same person that was at the Ferguson protest. The same person who had that much, energy and that much fight during the Ferguson protest now doesn't even really want to speak. Make it make sense. So that was the closest explanation that we received as to why they chose not to do it. And that was from Max Blumenthal basically taking a chance there and saying, hey, I'm going to try to see if I can just go ahead and approach her and get to where I need to be. Now, in reference to the McCarthy issue, I want to show you the difference between the determination that the squad members had and the determination that the Republicans who are against McCarthy have. Listen to what Matt Gaetz says here. It's very quick, but listen.
In some way to try to divide our conference. But look, he's a desperate guy whose vote share is dropping with every subsequent vote, and I'm ready to vote all night, all week, all month, and never for that person. So I tell you what, when he comes out and heads back to his squatting in the speaker's office, which why is he even allowed to be there? Like, is there some basis in law or statute or rule for someone who comes in second place in 6 consecutive speaker races to be able to
see the difference? I'm ready to do it all night. I'll be here all night, is what he said. All month if I have to. But we can't get that same type of rhetoric and energy from the squad. This is why people like me are pissed. Because the squad is supposed to have that type of energy. They're supposed to have that type of fight. Now, I want to go into this speech here. This is from Representative Chip Roy. I was not familiar with Chip until this morning. But Chip gave a speech here about what democracy actually looks like. Here he is criticizing his own Congress members. And even though he is a Republican, I think you might appreciate some of the things that he says about what it actually looks like to fight for something and to have an actual debate. Let's go ahead and get into that. Listen to this.
So this is what the chamber looks like when we're actually debating and the bodies are in the chairs.
Eric, can you use volume booster for this, please? So what he just said is this is what it looks like when everybody's there. So when they debate on issues,
this is what the chamber looks like when we're
everyone's
actually
not always
debating and the
present.
bodies are in the chairs. How many times have we been down here giving speeches and there's not a soul in the chamber? Yet this is what it takes to get 435 people in the chamber and have an actual debate. The American people are watching, and that's a good thing. What we're doing is exercising our rights to vote and have a debate and have a discussion about the future of this country through the decision of choosing a speaker. This is not personal. It's not. This is about the future of the country. This is about the direction of the country. American people who are looking at this body and wondering why we can pass $1.7 trillion bills that are unpaid for. They can just slide in $45 billion for Ukraine but not pay for it.
You heard that? But see, Anna Kasparian told you that it was just personal. They weren't actually asking for any concessions. Now he brings up the $40 billion going to Ukraine. Let's go on.
$1 billion for emergency spending and not pay for it. 10% increase in defense spending, 6% increase in non-defense spending and not pay for it. And not do a thing except put language in a bill that prohibits our ability to use the money to secure the border. That bill gets rammed through, and we know exactly how it gets rammed through, because the defense world and the non-defense world come together and say, you know what? We're going to cut a deal, and we'll all go to the mics, and we'll all go give speeches, and the American people are the big losers. That's what happened.
Did you hear that? The American people are the big losers. So he's calling out the defense spending. See, guys, this piece is important. Again, I'd never heard of CHIP until this morning, but this piece here is important.
Happens. We know that's what happens. The Rules Committee sits up there and passes a bill, sends it to the floor, and we have no debate on the floor of this body. We haven't been able to offer an amendment on the floor of this body since May of 2016. The former leader and I have discussed this right here.
They had a 4,000-page bill, that $1 trillion bill, that I know damn well they didn't all have time to read 4,000 pages. The bill came out that week and it was signed that week. And that was the one where a lot of money went towards the defense. So essentially, you have people signing bills that they're barely even reading.
That's true. But the fact is, this place has to change. It has to change. And the change comes by either adopting rules and procedures that will make us actually do our job, or it comes from leadership. And people ask me, what do you want? I want the tools, or I want the leadership to stop the swamp from running over the average American every single day.
So there you have it. What's that? Matt said Chip was right today, but my broken clock was also right twice a day. I know. I was like, I have never heard of Chip until this morning, but I agree with what he was saying there. It makes perfect sense. Like, why aren't people debating about these issues? Now, I want you to hear what this woman has to say about the squad not really being this powerful force that they were supposed to be. Now, shout out to Case Study QB for this clip, because again, if you just saw the way that Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert were like, no, we're going to be here all night, as long as it takes. We don't have that with the squad. We don't get that from AOC. We don't get it from Cori Bush. We don't get that from none of them. What we see them doing is just bending over for corporate Democrats. They just voted in Hakeem Jeffries. And Hakeem Jeffries doesn't even want progressives there. He don't want them there. He doesn't even support the policies that they're supposed to be trying to push. He doesn't support progressive policies. He's organized PACs to try to get those people out. And let me just vote him in. No debate whatsoever. So listen to what she says.
Well, the reality for Kevin McCarthy is Pelosi's nightmare back from 2019, as I'm sure you'll remember. She was, of course, elected as House Speaker when Democrats took back control. But progressives, newly elected progressives, led by folks like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, were openly skeptical of Pelosi's leadership, whether she should be Speaker at that time, whether it was time for generational change, and whether they would vote against her. AOC actually voted for her at that time, and Republicans booed her on the House floor for doing so. But all of this sort of shows that while Pelosi was elected Speaker at a time of these sort of left-wing rebels, that so-called squad never ended up being the threat to the Democratic Party that these right-wing rebels are ending up being to McCarthy and the larger Republican Party. And
so-called squad, they never ended up being a threat. And she compared them to the right-wing rebels that she's talking about right now. She compared them to Matt Gaetz and the rest of them, saying that they basically are actually more of a threat than the squad was supposed to be. That right there, if you are a member of the squad, you should be insulted. But they don't feel insulted. They're taking selfies of each other and not accomplishing anything. So what I tell you guys, this is on mainstream media. This is on MSNBC, or maybe they should be MSNBC. And how many people saw this because it's mainstream media? This just went out to millions of people, telling them that squad is not a threat. They never ended up doing much of anything. They're nothing here. They're nothing. So what does that tell people who are DSA members and still support the squad? What does that say to people who still constantly run defense for people like AOC and Cori Bush and all the rest of them? What does that say? How does that make you feel, hearing that they're not a threat at all? They're just Dems. And to show you how much of a threat they are not, you have someone here. You have this interview here with AOC. Now, there's buzz going around that AOC and some of the other progressives are actually considering voting for Kevin McCarthy to help him get speaker. So that's why she's interviewing her here. Let's listen to what she says, and then I'm going to tell you what I think about that strategy that they're trying to do to vote for Kevin McCarthy. See, it's okay for them to vote for a Republican. But the same people who criticize those of us at RBN and say we're secret right wing because we participated in a march for Medicare for All with people, some of them were conservative, we're secret right wingers, or because we heavily criticize the Democratic Party where they failed to do so because they're still trying to get access to these people, we're secret right wing to them. But here you have a Democrat politician letting you know she's willing to work with the Republicans and maybe even possibly vote for Kevin McCarthy to help him out. Now, are they going to call her right wing? I don't think so, because that's not what it's really about. Listen to this.
It did not go unnoticed, shall we say, on the internet and elsewhere, that you were on the floor having some conversations with Republicans, including Matt Gaetz and Paul Gosar. Can you enlighten us at all as to what those conversations were like? And is there any hope that you guys work together to get Hakeem Jeffries elected as Speaker of the House?
You know, I think in chaos, anything is possible. Especially.
Why is AOC, first of all, the Republicans are not going to vote for Hakeem Jeffries. Two, why is AOC referring to this force the vote strategy as chaos? Why is she calling this chaos? You mean to tell me, AOC, you are a member of DSA. So forcing the vote for Speaker of the House in an effort to get some type of concessions, you consider that to be chaos? Oh, and by the way, Jamal Bowman used the same term. You see the vocabulary, the language that they're using? Let me tell everybody, I'm going on mainstream media. Let me send this message to the masses and let people know that this type of behavior is considered chaos. You should never try to have a democratic process. You should never try to get something for your vote. That's chaos. Pay attention to that. Same person who protested outside of Nancy Pelosi's office is telling you that forcing the vote is chaos.
Especially in this era, you know, it is unlikely, but there's always a possibility. I do think that in terms of some of those conversations, I mean, listen, some of us in the House of Representatives are independent in certain ways from our party. And
some of us in the House of Representatives are independent in certain ways from our party. She's speaking of herself here. If you are independent from your party, then you should be an independent and not be a part of the party. This is a big part of the problem. Other people have done this. Other people have run as a Democrat or Republican and then changed their title to independent. Kyrsten Sinema did that. I know Justin Amash has also done that. AOC can do that right now. Miss, I'm independent of the party. You can change your affiliation to independent right now, but she's not going to do so because she really wants to be a part of the Democratic Party. Let's go on. She says something else here too. I'm going to comment on.
I do believe that in some of those conversations, there are things that are happening on the floor. These machinations are happening on the floor. And sometimes the leadership of your party, in this case, the Republican Party, will be making claims in order to try to twist arms and get people in line. And
Sometimes the leadership of these parties will play games and twist your arm to get people in line. What does that say to you guys? That tells you that that is what has happened to her. That you are independent of your party, but at the end of the day, it does not matter because party leadership is going to tell you what to do. And if you don't do what party leadership wants you to do, they will get rid of you too. I'm going to show you a clip that proves that. So let's go on.
A lot of times, information and truth is currency. So sometimes to be able to fact check some of the claims that McCarthy is making, whether Democrats are going to defect or not, et cetera, is important in order to keep him honest and to keep people honest in general. And so, I think what was important today was to send the message that we were united behind Hakeem Jeffries as the now minority leader.
We were united behind Hakeem Jeffries as the minority leader. You see this? She is united behind the same person that doesn't even support the progressive policies. Why are you united around someone who doesn't want Medicare for all? When's the last time she mentioned Medicare for all? What do you mean you're united? He is not united with you. He doesn't support you. He doesn't support your policies. So basically, she basically decided to shut up and get in line.
Or as leader of the Democrats, and that there would be no defections, that Democrats are here, we're not going anywhere. And if they want to play ball, we're open to that.
That's going to make a lot of people, I think, on one side of the aisle very happy and a lot of people on the other side of the aisle very concerned.
Yes, it would. If they want to play ball, we're open to that. It did not working with Republicans. Now, I hope everyone heard AOC say that, especially the people who want to smear other people as being right wing. It's okay for her to say she's open with working with Republicans. But how dare you try to organize some type of labor movement with one? How dare you go there? Now, this gentleman here, he responded to that statement that AOC made. Now, this is Dr. Michael Candleton. He said, we're going to change the Democratic Party to the Democrats are united, and there will be no defections in record time. From what working people need to what party leadership demands. Sad to see someone trade their soul for a career. Thank you so much, Dr. Candleton, because even he sees it. Now, she was speaking about party leadership. Give me 1 second. She was talking about party leadership twisting your arm.
Is that these people?
So Cynthia McKinney actually talked about that with me. This is going to be really quick. I want you to hear what Cynthia McKinney said about party leadership. Again, she was a Congress member. She was one of those people that pushed back against Democrat leadership, and they found a way to champion her by using a PAC to push her out. Listen to this.
People who are paraded before us as progressives can talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. And so at some point, you just have to accept what Congresswoman Maxine Waters said to me many years ago. Cynthia, you just have to accept that when the leadership tell us to do something, we're going to do it. And that's just sort of you could say the price of incumbency is your values.
Boom. The price of the incumbency is your values. maybe the squad should talk to Cynthia McKinney. But I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they will do that. Now, Bree had a lot to say about this, obviously, because she has been vindicated along with Jimmy Dore. I want to show you a piece of the segment that she had from Rising about Force the Vote and possibly what we could have accomplished here.
Camp pointed out, we can't even swear in as members of Congress until we elect a speaker. We can't form committees until we elect a speaker. We can't investigate anything until we have a speaker. Heavens to Betsy, that sounds a lot like leverage to me. And isn't that the point? The entire Republican agenda is now in the hands of a handful of opportunistic Congress members. And Republicans are not quite sure what to do about it. Some McCarthy supporters are trying to paint this Force the Vote effort as a self-interested hostage-taking mission, ginning up antagonism against the rogue Republicans in the public eye and ultimately in their districts where they probably hope they feel it the most. Here's Representative Dan Crenshaw on Fox News yesterday.
Republicans have been waiting years for this opportunity to take over the House. And so when the rest of the country looks at how Republicans are handling day one, they can't unite, they can't come together. It's day one and they can't agree already.
Yeah, that's a shame. It makes us look foolish. If I didn't know any better, it's like the Democrats paid these people off.
That's really stupid, the comment that he just made there. But I do just want to say something about what Bree just said there that I think is important for people to really get through their heads. Yes, you have a small number of people that decided to use their leverage. And whether you agree with what they're asking for or not, that is besides the point. The point to be made is the fact that they are using their numbers effectively to make sure that they get something out of this deal. And the squad is not willing to do that. And they were never willing to do that. And they were not going to do that. And I'm going to get to a point here where Bree explains to you why that happened. So we're going to get to the Jimmy Dore is right portion here. Because I told you in the beginning, everyone was on board, but something changed. What changed?
In 2020, the situation was reversed. Democrats had a small majority in the House, such that a handful of progressives, squad members alone, had enough votes to hold up Nancy Pelosi's nomination to lead the House. There were plenty of reasons, by the way, to do so. For one, AOC had previously gestured to the fact that she found it incredible that Pelosi had never faced a real speakership challenge in all her years. Moreover, we were at the start of the COVID pandemic and at the tail end of a progressive presidential campaign that delivered unprecedented public support for Medicare for all, along with other progressive policies. Did Bernie's loss mean that the movement representing a majority of Americans was supposed to die? And during a pandemic at that. Since Trump was still president, Democrats were still pretending to care about COVID deaths. And before the vaccines, when even young and healthy people were finding themselves hospitalized or even dying from COVID, there was genuine energy around using the public health crisis as a springboard for improving our public health system, which, by the way, is the most expensive in the world, despite yielding worse results than peer nations. Disgruntled progressives who made up a significant part of the Democratic Party base had dutifully voted for Biden, despite warnings from folks like myself who said that doing so without establishing some conditions would mean that Biden would ultimately betray most, if not all, of his campaign promises. And in the weeks after the election, progressive YouTube Politico and comedian Jimmy Dore floated a simple idea to get something in return for those very progressive voters. An idea, in fact, that he gleaned from the DSA's own handbook. That is, you guessed it, force the vote. Progressive squad members could leverage their speakership vote to extract concessions from Nancy Pelosi. Now, unlike Republicans now, the left's asks were to be substantive, not just procedural. One key ask was a vote on Medicare for all, which was intended to keep the fight alive and draw contrast between Democrats' claims that they want to improve health care for Americans and the fact that they repeatedly kill Medicare for all legislation as quickly as they receive money from the pharmaceutical industry. If you want to understand why the vote for Medicare for all was such an important ask, just look at what's happened over the last 2 years.
They couldn't even force the vote for Medicare for all during a pandemic. when hundreds of thousands of people died in this country that year. They weren't even willing to do it during that. This is why I tell you, these people are never going to do anything for you. They weren't even willing to do it during a pandemic. That's terrible. Terrible.
Look at how California, with its Democratic supermajority legislature, killed a statewide Medicare for All bill. Or consider how silent all of the squad members have been about Medicare for All since the end of the Bernie campaign. Did 68,000 people a year stop dying from a lack of health insurance? Or did it just become uncool to talk about it now that we're outside of a fundraising cycle?
Yep.
Now, some of us, fearful that exactly this would happen, rallied over the holidays in 2020, staffing phone trees and calling progressive Congress members furiously about the plan and even planning rallies. As left media figures debated the merits of the plan, people like David Sirota offered constructive additions to the ask, including a suggestion that Pelosi be forced to oust corporate Democrat Richie Neal from the Ways and Means Committee, where he was poised to stop progress on health care reform. What should be clear is
Richie, that's actually one of my representatives, by the way. He's awful. Just letting you guys know.
The specifics of the ask were much less important than the following fact. Nancy Pelosi was obviously an enemy to the left and should not have been voted for without gaining something significant in return. After AOC's first notable day in Congress, during which she protested with climate activists in Pelosi's office, the longtime speaker made quick work of bullying the squad members into submission. An iron fist and a Gucci glove is how Politico described Pelosi once. And over the course of their first 2 years in Congress, the squad members largely submitted to said fist. But here was an opportunity to draw attention to the corruption that paid for that proverbial Gucci glove. The squad members could have demanded important committee assignments. As the current rebel Republicans have done, they could have forced a vote on banning stock trading by Congress members. Yep. After all, Pelosi's personal wealth has ballooned during her decades in office, widely out of proportion to her congressional salary.
They didn't ask for anything on the national level. They just, from what I understand, after that, Cori Bush said she got something for her district. But when it came to getting all of us something on the national, they didn't ask for anything on the national level. And I want to know what the something is that she supposedly got for her district too, because she didn't say.
This is a woman who famously defended congressional stock trading despite the clear conflict of interest and insider knowledge Congress members possess. This is a woman who just presided over the quiet death of a bill to end congressional stock trading, one that was arguably designed to fail in the first place. But instead of choosing that moment to fight, to highlight the corruption of the Democratic Party, and to lead a genuine populist movement that stood a chance of waking people up to the limitations of the two-party duopoly, something curious happened. A call seemed to go out to leading figures in the progressive media that they should drop Force the Vote. Although I first heard of the idea from Sam Seder, host of the YouTube show Majority Report.
That part right there. See, this was the first time I heard that. I didn't know that before. So Bree told you that a call went out to the progressive commentators that I guess wanted to do like Force the Vote. As I told you before, apparently all of them were on board in the beginning. So here's my question. Who made that call? Where did that call come from? Who was the one that picked up the phone or sent the text message or the DM and told people to fall back? And was that someone in the media space or was that a politician? Because something that I noticed was that AOC had mentioned that she wasn't going to do it. This is when AOC and Justin Jackson, they went back and forth on Twitter for a while. I don't know if you guys saw that whole exchange, but during that time, they were going back and forth on Twitter, right? That she wasn't going to do it because she was going to try to get concessions with the $15 minimum wage. And we saw that did not work out. We saw how that went, right? So what I noticed was it seemed like after AOC said that she wasn't going to do it, that was when TYT backed off. That's what it seemed like. I could be wrong, but that's what it seemed like to me. But who made the call, you guys? See, we have to start asking these questions. If it was a politician who made that call, let's say it was AOC or someone, then that right there let you know that, again, those people who pulled back are maintaining the status quo so that they can have access to the politicians. Something to think about.
Who said he supported Jimmy Dore's idea despite having a long-standing feud with Jimmy. He quickly changed his tune, alluding to a call he'd received that discouraged this approach. A call from whom? We could only guess. The legacy left media all quickly turned against the idea, with large accounts like the Young Turks, Majority Report, and others spreading outright misinformation about the risks of what might happen if the squad declined to vote for Nancy Pelosi. They repeatedly claimed, wrongly, that Kevin McCarthy would become Speaker of the House by default.
This is why when some people ask, like, why do you guys, say rag on like Anna or Jink or whatever? Because you have to understand that they have one of the largest platforms in this space. And when they send a message like that message from Force the Vote, when they said that Kevin McCarthy would become Speaker, that resonated with some people. And then the smaller channels have to try to come back and be like, defend it and say, no, that's not true. And let me explain to you why. And they got that message out to a lot of people. Same thing with Sam Cedar. He did the same thing. So when they control the narrative, we're never going to get anywhere in reference to progress because they are misleading their viewers on purpose. Just like I showed you earlier with Anna Kasparian, she was gaslighting her viewers. You're a gaslighter. So this changed the whole game. Do you know how much more pressure would have been put on the squad if TYT and Majority Report would have stayed on for that project? They're the bigger channels.
Of course, as we all saw yesterday and today, that was never true. Hakeem Jeffries is not magically Speaker of the House despite earning more votes in the first count than McCarthy did yesterday. You need a majority of the House, not just a bare majority, to be Speaker. And yet the lie was so pervasive that Pramila Jayapal herself lied directly to former Rising host Ryan Grimm's face when he asked her during an interview why she voted for Nancy Pelosi.
See, guys, this is exactly what I was talking about. I'm going to play this call here from Ryan and then we'll cut it. But this is exactly what I was talking about. The lie was actually making its way around. It wasn't just making the way around in left independent media. You even had a politician spread that same lie. You see how this works? So dangerous.
About demanding real concessions.
Now, there were some pundits and left-wing media personalities ahead of this vote who were urging the CPC to use the vote for Speaker as leverage to extract a floor vote on Medicare for all. Why didn't the CPC end up taking that particular route?
Well, I'm sympathetic, obviously, as the lead sponsor of the bill, to people who are frustrated that we have not moved to a single-payer system yet. But the reality is that this is a very slim margin. The vote for Speaker was between Kevin McCarthy and Nancy Pelosi, and throwing the entire chamber into chaos would have been very detrimental for the election.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that buzzword? Chaos. Do you guys see? They all use the same words, the same vocabulary, the same message, the same framing, the same narrative. AOC used it, chaos. Jamal Bowman used it, chaos. This interview did not happen this week. They're all just spreading the same narrative. Chaos. Come on, Pramila, tell them again.
Use the vote for Speaker as leverage to extract a floor vote on Medicare for all. Why didn't the CPC end up taking that particular route?
Well, I'm sympathetic, obviously, as the lead sponsor of the bill, to people who are frustrated that we have not moved to a single-payer system yet. But the reality is that this is a very slim margin. The vote for Speaker was between Kevin McCarthy and Nancy Pelosi, and
No, it wasn't. What? The vote was between Kevin McCarthy and Nancy Pelosi. What is she talking about? What is she talking about? They had the majority.
Throwing the entire chamber into chaos would have been very detrimental for the Electoral College vote and everything else.
I later confronted Ryan about his failure to push back against Jayapal's claim on my podcast, and we had a constructive conversation about how things could have been handled differently. But since squad members rarely open themselves up to questioning from anyone in progressive media outside of Ryan Grimm at The Intercept, that missed opportunity was one that carried the lie that Kevin McCarthy could become Speaker if Democrats force the vote far and wide.
That was another CIA tactic. Let's come up with the reason why it can't be done. So they spread a lie. And a lot of people said it. A lot of people believed it and were saying it. Spreading that lie. And that really is what prevented Force the Vote. I think there were like 1 million people watching that night, but that is really what prevented Force the Vote from really having even more pressure on the squad. Because they took that lie and they ran with it. And we need to ask this question too. And Ryan Grimm's been on here and he's been on with us at RBN as well. We need to ask this question too. Why does Ryan Grimm continue to have access with the squad, but the people whose channels promoted the squad and helped them get elected have no access to the squad at all? Because Ryan Grimm is not going to push back on the squad. Ryan Grimm is going to defend them and defend the narrative. There's a reason why he's in that position. Because if it was any one of us, we would not be in that position because we would heavily criticize them and call them out for the things that they're not doing. People like us, we don't get access to the squad members, whether we help them get elected or not. So what you have to understand is everybody is playing their parts. Ryan Grimm is there as the White House bureau chief for The Intercept. And to maintain his access, he runs cover for them, does what he can here and there, but he runs cover for them. And to maintain this idea that they are legitimate progressive politicians and keep the American people thinking that there's somebody in there that's actually fighting for us. They're not. That's his part. TYT has their part. They'll push back a little bit, but never to the extent where they will lose access to politicians. That's their part. Oh, and they'll smear anybody else for a right wing for doing so. Majority report the same thing. And all these people will come together and just run a lie. And that's what happened with Force the Vote. And too many people believed it. And we couldn't even get one politician to show up to the town hall because they ran with that lie. All right, Eric, you ready? I'm going to take a quick break and then we'll go into call-in. We're going to talk about this tonight on call-in because I know you guys are like, can we talk about this? We're going to talk about it.
We're going to talk about it. All right. So we got a call-in show coming up. In fact, let's show that. Here we go. So tonight it's McCarthy Force the Vote on the call-in. So there's a here, let me hit the there we go. I'll put the link in the chat again. You can hit the call-in link, or you can put call-in on your smartphone. This is where we give Sabby a little break, and then she'll be back on here for a moment, and then we'll get it into call-in, and we'll kick it into there, and you can tell us what you all think about what's going on with Force the Vote, Republicans, Democrats. Let me swap this around. All right, let's see. I do have some chats to go through, so let's work on that. Here on the Rockfins, we had a tip from JBB. Thanks for that. And this tip comment from Dave Burt. Thank you. He says, good show, Sabrina. Good luck to you and Eric. Nice comments on government. And thanks for that, Dave Burt. All right. And we had some comments here, of course, on the old YouTubes. Let's see. This one from Max Fiend. Seems like you fall in line or get run out of Congress. They gerrymandered Kucinich out. They decided they wanted that money. Yeah, I mean, all the ones that stay in get paid. And from Intermediary Fossil says, Hakeem just wants that mean green. Comment from Kirsten. Democrats are the more effective evil, but Republicans will allow it. Two heads of one snake. And this comment from Oracle at Delphi, Noel. The squad is busy having book signing parties. They are, and we'll see if we hear from Noel on call-in tonight and shortly. And this comment, this super chat from Make the Best of What's Still Around. Ask AOC, what's the difference between a ruckus and a chaos? Thanks for that. Make the best. Yeah, because AOC famously said, we're going to bring the ruckus. And we saw what happened with that. Not much ruckus other than maybe a tax the rich dress. And JB had a little comment here. He was talking about, I think he put this one in when Cynthia McKinney was talking about how when Democratic Party leadership tells them to do something, they do it. And JB said that sounds like an employer-employee relationship instead of a governing body. Based there from JB. And we had a new member sign on here, Marlene. Thank you for that. And I want to say, while you're kicking around here, be sure to hit the like button on your way in, on your way out. Yeah, we had a good viewership tonight. Always good to see. Oh, one other thing I wanted to put in regarding the Twitter files. Matt Taibbi recently posted a really good capsule summary, kind of the cliff notes of the Twitter files and all 11 or 12 of them. So I put a link into that if you want to catch that, and it's a really good way to quickly catch up on all the Twitter files entries. But yeah, so kind of my take on this is I think it's great to be pointing out how Republicans are doing force the vote where the Democrats didn't. But in terms of why that's happening, I do get a little, I wouldn't say annoyed, but impatient with the framing of saying that the Democrats are weak or they don't have the courage to do that. And what I would say is that they have plenty of courage and they represent their constituents quite well. The problem is we are not their constituents. Their constituents are the top 0.1% in that billionaire class. That's who they're representing, and they're representing them quite well. So on the Republican side, that can look like this sort of force the vote, this kind of pressure. I think what's really happening is the billionaire, the elite, the megacorps, the money class, that whole set of interests, they want to put a leash on the speaker. And they want to be able to say, oh, we're just going to have a no confidence vote just at any time anybody wants. And that's a form of pressure on the speaker. So they can just say, well, if you're not doing what that money class wants, then they'll pull you, and they'll pull it quickly, and they'll pull it easily. And I think that's what a lot of this comes down to. And the rest of it's just performative nonsense, and they're getting up there talking about corruption. But I mean, it's theater when these Republicans talk about it. I mean, the idea that Republicans are going to come in and sweep out the corruption is quite laughable. But the other thing we know now is the idea that Democrats are going to come in and sweep out corruption is also quite laughable. And so these interests running things and whatnot in the top 1.1%, what that looks like on the Democrat side is Democrats not forcing the vote, and Democrats falling in line and just not doing anything to help the 99%. And so it's straight up corruption. It's corruption on both parties. It's corruption, on every member there. There are no progressives in Congress. And so my take is we need to remember that and keep that framing. Now, we're going to want to hear about your take on call-in. And we'll see you out there and in there.
That is right. So we are heading over to call-in, guys. This is episode 69. McCarthy forced the vote. So far, Kevin McCarthy has lost 6 rounds. It's now 9. It was 6 when I wrote this for Speaker of the House. Watching Republicans force the vote against McCarthy is embarrassing because the squad wasn't willing to do this to Pelosi. How does this make you feel? Let's chat. And the link is pinned to the top of the chat for call-in. So let's head over there. Oh, update too. I found this out before I went live. It looks like, hold on, let me check my tweet one more time. Check my messages. Okay, yeah. I'm going to be on the Jimmy Dore show tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Looks like I'm going to be having this discussion again. So definitely check me out over there. And then I'll be back live here later on tomorrow night. So let's go over to call in. I want to hear from you guys. How do you feel about all this? What do you think is really going on? Come see me over there. Let's go chat. I know you guys got some things to say. Let's do the damn thing. By the way, guys, I'm doing really well on call in. I'm one of the top shows on there now. So I guess you guys like talking to me. So let's continue to do that. All right, let's head on over to call in and have a good night. Keep up the fight.